Hare Krishna, we're back. So, Your Grace. Oh, do you want to... Yeah, I think... How does this work again?
So I can switch the camera, just pressing.
Oh, yeah. So that way you can see what you're filming, right?
I got 3 minutes.
What's that?
I don't know if people tune in exactly like you said.
Well, we said 6 o'clock, so
Yeah.
we're already about half an
4
hour.
people watching.
Yeah, and they'll gradually congregate there. Oh my God, makeup. Just kidding. I've never done this without.
Really?
No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, let's get an audio level on you and we'll start. Okay, tell me about Bhakti Tirtha Swami. When was the first time you met him?
Is this recording or
No, I just need to get a...
Okay,
Oh,
well-
wait, I don't have the mic on you. Hello. Okay, you need to stand up though, just for a sec while I put this on you, okay?
Turn the camera away, people will see my hands.
You take your shirt off.
God,
Yeah,
how dare you?
I know. I do there. Okay, I don't want to get so close. You can put it up here, okay? There you go.
Oh man. Okay.
Yeah. Grazie.
Niente, prego.
Okay. You know what? You put up your undershirt. I'd rather it come out between the two shirts.
That costs extra.
Put it on my tab.
Okay, let's see. Well, that was good. That way I can tuck that.
That's
in.
right. There we go. Good job.
What are you doing there? I'm just curious.
Writing that we're starting soon.
Oh. Well, you know how to do those things. Yeah, your age, you understand that stuff. Okay, let's go. Hi.
Hi, Bo.
I'm about to try to sell you something. Okay.
Let me just get a level, say, oh, you got your glasses on.
Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of ISKCON.
Do you wear glasses like full time now?
Yes, I always have. Hare Krishna, ain't no difference from Jim guy. Okay, level testing. Now is the time for all good living entities to come to the aid of ISKCON.
Okay, let me check. Focus one more time. And look in the lens. You don't have to lift your head up because you're, there you go.
Right.
Just like that. And action.
Action, okay. I am here with, as I said before, Karunamayi, beautiful young lady, Vaishnavi, who just recently got married, is moving to London, and Siddhanta, my godbrother, who has made a major historical contribution to ISKCON in the world by creating the Prabhupada Memory Series. I think it's probably not a devotee in the world that hasn't received a lot of spiritual benefit from his service. So now he's filming me. I'm going to be speaking about my dear godbrother, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and at the request of Karunamayi. So I'll begin, right? First meeting. I took sannyas in May of 1972, Lord Narsingha's appearance date, and just about a month later, actually, so just maybe 3 or 4 weeks later, with Sasarupa, who took sannyas at the same ceremony as me, I created this college preaching program. And so that program took us to Chicago a few months later, where I met a very promising young devotee. I don't think we said Bhakta in those days, John Prabhu or something. Who became Bhakti Tirtha Swami, or Ganesham, the name that Prabhupada gave him. So he joined our party as a brahmachari. And the first service we did together, I hate to say it, but I guess statute of limitations will protect me, but we created these letters of recommendation for our college program. We literally created them. He, of course, was from Princeton. I was from Berkeley. We had another young devotee who became Mahabodhi, and he was from San Diego State University. And what we did is in those days there were no computers, so I sent Bhakta John, we'll say, out to get what was called then Letraset. Remember Letraset? You would go to the store, stationery store. There used to be stationery stores, and buy these sheets that have letters on them, and then you would literally press the letters onto a piece of paper, and that's how we would make posters or flyers. And so we did posters together for a program, and then we created letters from student body presidents of various prestigious universities. I hate to say that. I mean, in defense, I was 23 years old. It was the days of the student revolution, and I would not do it now. But we did. And Bhakti Tirtha, as he became known later, actually, we wrote the letters together. And of course, he had been president of a student council of Princeton, so he wrote a letter in his name saying that this was the greatest program on earth. We created all these letters, and we created posters. So that's the first thing we did together. Then we actually traveled around the Midwest and began speaking in universities. Prabhupada himself liked this program very much. In fact, there's a famous class Prabhupada gave in Vrindavan, Nectar Devotion class, where he said, 2 American Goswamis are traveling around Midwest USA. So he really liked that program. So as far as Bhakti Tirtha, I'll just say Bhakti Tirtha, so I don't have to keep changing his name based on what year we're talking about. He was always, I would say, from the beginning, very sincere, very intelligent, and he had exceptional ability in preaching. I remember on book distribution, this one image sticks in my mind. We were, I think, in Akron, Ohio, or some other glamorous city like that, and it was kind of the Rust Belt, and we were downtown. It was sort of white, blue-collar, lower middle class, and some young people were walking by, and I was just sort of, I don't know why I was just watching, but I was kind of watching Bhakti Tirtha. He was a brahmachari then, and he took control of the situation in this very elegant, sort of effortless way. Very nice, smiling, they loved him. And he just literally told them where to stand. Okay, well, why don't you just stand right here, and you can just stand right there. And then, okay, this book's for you. And then he just took control of the situation, told everybody where to stand, what book to get, somehow what book to take, and did it in such a way that everyone was really happy, and they all took the books. So I was impressed that he was, he just had this real, you could say, charisma, or just this ability to charm and persuade people. In a very sincere way. I mean, his motives were very sincere, and he was obviously very devoted to the mission. So we traveled like that. He was a brahmachari, and we lived in vans. We had these 2 vans, which I had arranged to purchase, and we would sleep in vans, like all of us. As a sannyasi, maybe I didn't have to have my head in a box, a book box or something. I had some kind of perk. But we, Satrup and myself, and Ganesham, as he was then, and several other brahmacharis, we traveled around the United States speaking in colleges. And the next, and of course, he was fully dedicated to that program. The next thing that happened that really was, changed his life, actually, was that no, you're not supposed to speak like this in this gone, but I created, I acted as Krishna's instrument to create this program, which became the BBT Library program. And all those who were older voters, you of course you remember that. And the genesis, the origin of this program was that I once was sitting with Prabhupada, alone with Prabhupada in his garden in Los Angeles. And Prabhupada asked me if his books were in bookstores and libraries. I then tried to explain to Prabhupada that if we put the books in libraries, not many people are going to check them out because people don't know about them, or the bookstores, people might not buy them. We would just go out directly in the streets, so lots of books. And then Prabhupada made an expression and said a few words which clearly indicated that was the wrong answer. So I saw what Prabhupada's intention was, and I just said, yes, Prabhupada, we'll take care of that. And that's the way it was. I mean, that Prabhupada liked that. Prabhupada asked a question, I gave the wrong answer. I saw that he really wanted his books in libraries and bookstores, and so I just said, basically consider, we'll do it. We'll take care of it. And then the way this library program started, the reason I'm mentioning this library program is because it really is what first made Ganesham, we'll use that name, famous in ISKCON. It really brought him to Prabhupada's attention in a very dramatic way, and really made him a very well-known devotee in ISKCON. This program. So what happened is, to start the program, we were in Iowa City, the University of Iowa, and I thought, I've got to start this program. Prabhupada wants this. So I went in my sannyas dhoti and everything in Dunda, and I walked into this big university library, and then I told them I wanted to sell books on, I don't know what I said, Asia, South Asia, Hinduism, whatever. So this man came out, or the short man, and he looked, of course, in those days we were always used to getting hostile reactions. He looked at me and he said, I know who you are, I know what you want. Come in, come in. So he welcomed me in, and he bought everything. He bought all of Prabhupada's books. That was the first set probably sold in ISKCON. And certainly it was the first set of books sold to a library. And then the next problem was he wanted the normal paperwork, and we didn't have any because BBT didn't do that. So I told him I'd arrange it for him. I'd get the paperwork to him. So I called the BBT and told him, just sold a set of Prabhupada's books at the University of Iowa Library. What do we do now? So they had to sort of, make up some form to fill out. Anyway, the sale went through. And then I started, as we traveled to colleges, I started selling books to libraries and also going to speak to professors and, getting them to use Prabhupada's books as textbooks. So I sold a lot of books to professors, and we got some books used as textbooks, and sold books in libraries. So at that point, Ganesham, Mahabodhi, they were going out every day and just doing regular Sankirtan, inviting people to the programs we were doing on campus. And I was doing the library program. But then in 1974, in February or March, at the first annual Mayapur festival, it was the first time that the GBC met in Mayapur, and Prabhupada said every year you should meet in Mayapur. So that was the first Gaur Purnima Mayapur festival in ISKCON. 1974, Prabhupada called me to his room and asked me to become GBC of Latin America. So I accepted, great, honored, and I accepted, and then I flew back to America, and I'd left Ganesham and our Brahmachari party in New Haven, Connecticut, just north of New York, because we were going to do programs at Yale. And so I had to go to Latin America, and I just assumed that, I have to turn this over. Actually, let me go back a few months. I have to go back a few months. Sorry about that. With Bhakti Tirtha. Bhakti Tirtha Ganesham, as he was called then. Before I went to India, we were in San Antonio, Texas. I was with them, and so then I said, let's go to Harvard. Let's go preach in the Ivy League, top schools. So we drove up to Boston, January, it was the winter, and somehow or other, Prabhupada had not yet asked me to go to Latin America, but I thought I should train our best men up to do this library work because it shouldn't just depend on me. So the best men were, of course, Ganesham and Mahabodhi. And so I remember, I think that was in New York before we even got to Boston. I went with them in our van down to the garment district in New York City, Manhattan, and I personally kind of picked out these classy suits for them. I think it was like 3-piece tweed suits for Ganesham and Mahabodhi. I got these suits for them. And then I started to explain to them how to sell books in libraries and just what I was doing and so on. And of course, they were very quick learners. And then I went to India. And when I came back, I was leaving, so I really turned it over to them. And Satsarupa took over as the manager, because they were brahmacharis. And so Satsarupa took responsibility for that program, especially because both those devotees, Ganesham and Mahabodhi, had been working with Satsarupa before I joined and made it into a college program. So then I went down to Latin America, and then very soon, Ganesham and Mahabodhi began to perform these amazing feats, like these superhuman feats, and they were selling. You remember that? You remember the news? Yeah, you remember it. And they were just selling books everywhere. They were just unstoppable. And of course, Ganesham, he had all these powers and charm, and they were just figuring out amazing ways to convince university libraries to take books. They were going to all the professors, and they really, and of course, Prabhupada loved this program. Prabhupada loved this program, and it really catapulted them into real notoriety in ISKCON. They became well known, because in those days, book distribution was like everything. Remember that? I mean, book distribution was everything. The Sancton newsletter was the Bible. And they were selling, huge amounts of books to the most important people. And so at that point, Ganesham and then also Mahabodhi, they became very well known, and everyone was kind of following their exploits. And in the Sankirtan newsletter, we get news about it. And so really, all of ISKCON was participating or following. It's almost like, if your team makes it into the World Series or the Olympics or the World Cup or something, the whole country's kind of like following the team. And so it was really like that. It was really like that, because the devotees, book distribution was everything then. And so really all over the world, devotees were really following the exploits of Ganesham and Mahabodhi. So then, I don't remember the exact year, I'm sure someone else has explained this. They kind of did the planet. You couldn't go to the Soviet Union back then, so that cut out a big chunk of the planet. And so they kind of went where you could go. And then at a certain point, Ganesham, or Bhakti Tirtha Swami, took sannyas, and he became the GBC of Africa. And then, of course, that famous contribution began of really opening up Africa. Before then, we had a center. Brahmananda had gone to Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, and I think also perhaps Mombasa. But if you look at a map, India is actually close to East India. It's just I don't know, maybe 2-3 hour, whatever it is, flight from Mumbai, Bombay as it was then. And so there were a lot of Indians doing business in Africa, especially East Africa. And so they were, without question, the low-hanging fruit. And so when Prabhupada went to Kenya, to Nairobi, he famously said that we cannot simply preach to Hindus. This is Africa. You have to preach to the Africans. And that was a challenge for various reasons for the devotees who were there. But then, of course, Bhakti Tirtha changed all that. Also, he went to, he really opened up West Africa. West Africa, it's funny because, West Africa is more Western, and East Africa is more Eastern. So West Africa is, in some ways, sort of you could say the more Western part of Africa. And, of course, Bhakti Tirtha, and he really began to open up Africa. And this is something that I really appreciated, because somehow Prabhupada had blessed me to do that in Latin America. to really open up Latin America. And so in that sense, I really, in a sense, identified with what he was doing in Africa. And even Prabhupada, regarding, you know, what he did, Bhakti Tirtha Swami did in Africa. Prabhupada, of course, as we know, got on the Jaladuta. In fact, a week from today is the departure date when Prabhupada left on the Jaladuta. And Prabhupada came to America, and he was alone, and he just opened it up, started his movement, and he really identified with. I mean, Prabhupada felt, let's say, a certain solidarity, an appreciation for devotees that did what he did. Of course, we all did it on a smaller scale, for obvious reasons. But Prabhupada really felt a solidarity. It's like, you know, it's like a dad. When you go into your dad's business, you know, your dad's happy, good, you know, you come in just like your dad. And so Prabhupada really did feel that appreciation, solidarity with disciples that did what he did. And I know he really appreciated the work that we did in Latin America. And so Bhakti Tirtha became, you know, famous. Everyone in ISKCON knew that he's the guy, he's the person who really opened up Africa. And he did it partly just because by his Krishna consciousness, and he was always innovative, he was always, you know, kind of, you know, clever and charismatic, and somehow would get the job done. And so he figured out Africa, he cracked Africa, sub-Saharan Africa. And of course, it's famous that he became a tribal chief, and you know, he adopted those traditional African clothes, and I mean that definitely helped, but that's not the whole story. I mean, it's rather ISKCON in Africa was successful for the same reason. He figured out how to become an African chief. I mean, it's really all for the same reason. It's not that you just like dress up like that and everyone in Africa joins the Hare Krishna movement. It's not like that. It's because he really had the power to reach people in an innovative way, speak to them in a meaningful way in their language, and so that's very famous. I mean, everyone in ISKCON knew, and hopefully still knows or remembers, that it was really Bhakti Tirtha Swami that opened up the African mission, really made ISKCON a widespread, important movement in Africa. And then, when he started to spend more time in America, he developed his innovative program in Washington, D.C. The name was, what was the name? The Spiritual Technology or something? I forget. Kurunamai, do you remember the exact name?
Spiritual Center, Science,
something like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was a name. And he made devotees, and basically he had that ability, whether he was in the Rust Belt in Akron, Ohio, or in Africa, or in Washington, D.C., he just figured out how to get the job done. He could adapt, he could reach people, or selling books to professors and libraries. He had the ability, the intelligence to speak to people in their language and convince them. He had that ability. So then at a certain point, he took over Gita Nagari and moved, I guess, most of the devotees from Washington to Gita Nagari, to stay Gita Nagari, and that's another story. And then he set up his spiritual center there in Gita Nagari. And I remember that I went to see him maybe like a month or two before Krishna took him. And he, of course, he had a spiritual warrior series also. So he was a devotee who really was immersed in the Sankirtan mission in a very original, innovative, intelligent, and powerful way. And, love. All you need is love. I remember that the last couple of years, he, I think correctly, believed correctly that ISKCON was sort of this hard-driving movement in those days with a lot of assets. Sounds like the CIA, we had assets all over the place. But that, sort of the famous cliche, I thought we're supposed to be a personalist movement. That's, it's a very old cliche in ISKCON, so why aren't we more personal? And there actually are sort of fairly rational socio-psychological reasons that would explain that, but it doesn't mean it's right. And so at a certain point, Bhakti Tirtha Swami really dedicated himself to trying to personalize ISKCON. He traveled around the world, and of course he was very popular everywhere. Traveled around the world, and he held many seminars, I remember, and about just really hammering away at this point that we have to love each other, we have to be more personal. And so that became, that was, I think, another contribution. I don't think anyone since him has really sort of as explicitly just carried that banner. But I think a lot of devotees in their own way, not in such a high-profile way as he could do because of his position, but I think a lot of devotees have continued that. In fact, I think now the fact that we have, for example, a Grihastha ministry or something where then there's like seminars on how to be a good husband or wife or how to take care of your children. I think a lot of the programs in ISKCON that focus on different segments of the society, whether child care or grihastas or even, trying to, sannyasis, how they can associate together. I think that whole concern in a larger sense of devotees should relate to each other in a loving way, devotees should care about each other. He definitely, I think, was a pioneer of that in terms of bringing it out explicitly and really just talking about it openly and holding seminars and so on and so forth. So I think that was also a significant contribution. I was given a list of questions. What's your favorite color? What's your favorite ice cream? Sorry, that's just a joke. But so as far as did you serve together, yeah, I explained that in the early days. And of course we would meet. The nature of ISKCON in those days, and to some extent still, is that we really were, Prabhupada sent us to the far corners of the earth. So I was in Latin America and Bhakti Tirtha Swami was in Africa, which is it's not like an easy commute. And so, so mostly we would meet at GBC meetings or like really important big festivals. And actually it's always been that way. If you read the Bhagavatam or Mahabharata, the sages would meet at great festivals or at great events because they lived in different parts of the universe and so on. And so it was kind of like that. Can you comment on his sadhana? Yeah, he was very serious. I mean, he was a real practicing Vaishnava. He took his sadhana very seriously. What would he expect of his disciples? Well, ultimately, I think that they be good devotees, sincere devotees. They try their best. I think the same that, in a sense, that every guru that just kind of, is on target. It's like your children. I mean, if you have children, if you're married now, and so you have children, you want them to be good devotees and just try to make some contribution. I think that's really the point. Just like you're making a contribution by organizing this filming, and so I think every serious guru just wants the disciples to be happy in Krishna consciousness, to be sincere, and to try their best to make a contribution to Prabhupada's mission. Can't imagine what else you would want. And of course, by being good devotees, that includes how you relate to other devotees and to other people. What were some of the challenges Bhakti Tirtha Swami faced? Within ISKCON, I don't think he faced like really major challenges. There was one sannyasi I won't name who was kind of harassing him, but at least that same person harassed a number of other sannyasis, so at least they could, they could have maybe like a support group or something. A guru's being harassed by this person, but apart from that, I think that I think Bhakti Tirtha Swami was very widely appreciated, both by other leaders and by, certainly by his disciples and by devotees in general. So, you know, maybe I just didn't hear about something, but yeah, I think he was very widely appreciated, as far as I can remember. Oh, Iron Curtain pastimes. Yeah, that's right, because they even went and sold books, I think, behind the Iron Curtain. For those of you who are not as old and mature as some of us are, and didn't live through the Soviet Union and the Iron Curtain and all that, it's hard to really think your way back. I mean, think North Korea, like, you know, okay, let's go do Sankirtan in North Korea, like, not a good idea. So, so I think Bhakti Tirtha Swami, they carried this program behind the Iron Curtain, which was dangerous. I mean, I don't think it was dangerous for an American in the sense they wouldn't, like, imprison or assassinate an American. They just throw him out of the country. But it was, still, I mean, I went to behind the Iron Curtain in 1979, I think, went to East Berlin and Poland when it was under the Soviet Union. So, I mean, to be honest, I don't think an American citizen was sort of like risking serious imprisonment, but still, I mean, you didn't know. I mean, these were not reliable regimes. Did Bhakti Tirtha Swami share anything of how Prabhupada inspired him in his services? Well, he loved Prabhupada, and he was an intelligent devotion. It wasn't just sentimental. I mean, Bhakti Tirtha Swami wasn't one to just, you know, tell anecdotes. We all love Prabhupada anecdotes, but it wasn't just one of those nice anecdotal relationships with Prabhupada. It was based, I think, on a mature understanding of what Prabhupada really wanted. And Prabhupada, who Prabhupada really was, and what he really wanted. I remember I watched on webcam a year or so ago. I watched a Vyas Puja for Prabhupada, Vyas Puja program at a major ISKCON temple, and everyone was glorying Prabhupada, and no one really talked about the mission. Like, if you love Prabhupada, you have to help us. We have to all go out and spread this mission. We have to rebuild the West. It's like no one said that. It was just kind of like anecdotes. Oh, here's a really charming little story. And so I think Bhakti Tirtha had a more mature appreciation. He loved Prabhupada, obviously. He gave his life for Prabhupada. And he really understood the mission. He really understood what Prabhupada actually wanted, which is that we not only just tell nice little stories about Prabhupada, but actually get the job and do what Prabhupada wanted and get his mission going. So he definitely understood that. His biggest contribution to ISKCON? They're all big. I mean, the library program was a very major contribution. Africa was enormous. I mean, opening up a whole part of the world. Africa was very important. So I would say, ultimately, in terms of historical impact, I think the Library Party in Africa. I mean, those were obviously, I think, his biggest contributions. Which teaching of Srila Prabhupada did Bhakti Tirtha Swami exemplified? I think the core teaching, you know, be a good devotee. Dedicate your life to the Guru. Get something done. He just exemplified what Prabhupada wanted in his disciples. Any strong etched memories? I've already gone over those. First impressions. Favorite pastimes of Maharaj? I don't really have a favorite anything. I don't have a favorite color. I don't have a favorite Gita verse. I don't have a favorite pastime of Krishna. I just kind of a package guy, you know. Take the package. So, Sadhana, I already commented. Departure pastime. He bravely and Krishna consciously left this world. And it's, in that sense, it reminds me of Parikshit Maharaj. You know, there are cases of great devotees like Tamal Krishna Goswami who just suddenly left. And then there are cases like Prabhupada and like Bhakti Tirtha Swami, where a devotee has a clear picture that, my time is limited and I have approximately whatever time. And so in that sense, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, when he understood that Krishna had some exciting, amazing service for him in another place, or maybe here back on earth in a different way, then he did what you're supposed to do, in the book. I mean, in terms of, you read Prabhupada's books, like, what should you do? That's what he did. It was, in fact, his leaving this world is kind of a textbook illustration of how to do it right. He focused his mind on Krishna very intensely, and went with Krishna. So I think the most important thing about his departure is he did it right. He wasn't just preaching about it when he was younger and healthy, but he actually did it right, which is not that easy. But he did. So the Africa challenge, well, every region of the world is challenging in its own way. Africa, no one would say is unchallenging. And so, there are many countries. It's actually the largest continent, I think, in terms of, well, of course, maybe Asia is, but a lot of Asia is just kind of, Siberia. But Africa is just a huge, huge continent with so many countries, dozens of countries. They have different cultures and different languages and different histories. And it requires tremendous agility and intelligence to bring Krishna to all those different places. And Bhakti Tirtha Swami was able to do that. So, whatever challenges there were, he obviously met them and was very successful. So, do you have any question? So, thank you all very much. Thank you for the opportunity to remember a very dear and exceptional godbrother. Hare Krishna.